This will be the most actionable art advice you've ever heard, and it works for every type of artist. So while you watch me draw this today, I'm gonna share with you how I built a $3,000 to $5,000 a month art business through only realistic and actionable advice. And this has helped thousands of artists just like you. Wanna learn how? Let me start by explaining why I think that this is going to be a more relatable version from what everybody else's story that you've heard on this topic before. Because one of the things that I originally found when I was first getting into freelancing and art and wanting to grow that type of a business was that it seemed like everybody that was sharing their advice and their experience had a totally different life than what I led. And is this you too? Like, do you watch other YouTubers or do you watch other videos, you read other advice, and they're coming from people that have already come from the game industry or come from the art industry, and meanwhile you're working at like Starbucks and you just feel like you can't approach it in the same way because you don't have that exposure level? And that's exactly what I did too. So when I first started out wanting to get art commissions and wanting to build an art business, I was working full-time and I wanted to do this as a side hustle, and I wanted that to be kind of my extra cash flow, you know? And it also seemed like everybody else's advice was just not applicable and it was completely inactionable. And it all dealt with the fact that everybody seemed to think that you needed to have a social media following in order to get anywhere. And I think that the biggest thing that you and I both have come to the understanding of is just that you can't rely on that and you can't count that that's ever going to happen for you. So in my story that I want to share with you today, I want to talk to you about how I opposed that model 100%, and I never put faith and I never put practice into it. And then also too, how I was able to do this from literally nothing and having no type of following whatsoever. Like I had less than 100 followers on DeviantArt when I first started getting clients. And then from my experience, I also want to let you know this, how you can sustain that, how you can not lose motivation from that, and most importantly, how you can love your art and love your projects and love your growth all the way through. Because if you're perhaps struggling with burnout, this is gonna help you majorly. Are you game? Because I can't wait to share this with you. Now, this tip I'm about to lay on you is really oppositional to what you have commonly heard, but I want to explain to you my experience and why I learned that you playing the artistic field is just not sustainable for you, my friend. So when I was first starting out and when I was still in my beginning phases, one thing I used to do very often is I used to take a look at other artists' commission sheets, and I would start to take a look at artist offerings. I would start to take a look at artist websites too, like art commission websites. You ever been on these before? And here's what I used to notice, is that it seemed like everybody was trying to push and trying to offer a lot of things. And one similar thing that you're gonna learn, just as I do, is that when you're first starting off, it's totally natural for you to want to be broad because you have a lot of loves, you have a lot of interests, don't you? And you probably watch a lot of things and you consume a lot of media from a lot of different genres. We're not all just one interest ponies, right? However, though, when you as an artist are switching to being in the mode of just doing art for yourself to doing art as a business, you're going to learn that you narrowing down is not going to limit you. It's not going to funnel you. It's going to supercharge you, okay? And it's going to lead you down the road of specialization. And this should be, as I learned, is the number one trick to you actually taking off, to you getting where you want to go. So for me personally, what I did was I switched wholeheartedly everything I was doing. And I was getting a whole lot at the time of like sci-fi and military stuff, and I was like, I'm done with that. I want to do fantasy. I had never really gotten many fantasy characters. I enjoyed that the most. And if you're like, well, Sean, listen, I love so many things. Why can't I offer it? Here's my suggestion for you, okay? Just pick the one that you love the most. Or you can also conduct some market research and see which one is going to have the most potential for it. And if you're opposed to this one, can I just offer you it this way? Do you want to fail 5 different ways or succeed one? Because if you think about every company that you know, if you think about every artist that you know and you look up and you admire to, I bet this, they do one particular niche and they do one particular style when they start off. And then just to kind of free you from this too, like I'm not trying to shackle you here, but once you get success in that one thing, then you can go ahead and you can branch out. But look, once I gained this, I gained massive consistency. I started to increase my pricing and I started to get return customers. Wouldn't you love that too? Because I know it'll work for you. Now, how would you like to learn how I went from charging just $35 per artwork to upwards of $1,500 per artwork? So first off, when you first start out, it's inevitable that you're going to start out at your lowest possible price point. and how low that price point is for you, it might feel like crap. Because let me just ask you this. If you've done this before, if you've taken $20 commissions, $25 commissions, $30 commissions, and myself personally, like my lowest price point was $35. How demoralizing does that feel? Like, do you really feel supercharged to just go ahead and sit down and bang out like the most amazing artwork of your life? Heck no, you feel terrible. You're watching the time tick by and you're like, oh God, no, like why am I still doing this? I didn't get paid enough. And when you math that out, you're like, man, I get paid less than a McDonald's worker for super skilled labor. Is this you? And are you trying to think about, well, how do I get past this? I got you on that. One of the things that I learned is that I have to throw my all into where I'm currently working to get to where I want to go. Because, simple fact, if you're not putting your best into what you're currently getting, you're never gonna get to where you want to go. So one of the things I used to do is I would take a look at my current artwork, and let's say I was only getting paid $50 for it, and I would say, okay, cool. How do I get to the next price point? So what does a $100 artwork look like? And then what does a $200 artwork look like? What's a $250 artwork look like? What's a $500 artwork look like? What does a $1,000 artwork look like? So one of the things that I kept on doing was I kept on putting in the time and putting in the efforts as if I was getting paid those amounts. And I would never compromise on that as well. Because tell me this, do you ever, and be honest, do you ever put less energy into things that you're not getting paid what you want for? That's honest and that's real and that's okay. Like if you feel that way and if you feel dejected at times, that's perfectly human, my friend. But here's the thing I just want to challenge that with. If that is your attitude right now, how is your attitude going to change in a year, 2 years, 5 years? Because one thing I learned was that your desired outcome is going to help you produce the necessary results. And if your desired outcome is just get this thing done, it's okay-ish, it's all right, like it's done, then you are never going to get to the level that you want to get to because you're only willing to put in what you're wanting to put into it, what you feel like putting into it, not what the project needs and demands. And that's how you're going to grow your client base. And that's one of the major things that allowed me to just grow my pricing rapidly over the course of a few years. Do you think you can do that too? Now, if you've been trying to grow your business for a bit, you might have heard this gem. You ever heard somebody say, hey, just keep it up, just keep going? Well, I want to tell you why that's probably the most worthless advice that you could possibly hear. So let me take you back to 2013, and this is when I first began my art commissions journey. And is around that time that commission sheets were really huge. And what really spurred this all on for me was that I remember being on the DeviantArt job forums, and I would, because that's where I first started off, and I would always notice that there would be waves every single year. It was almost like quarterly of like these people coming in hot, they're hitting every single post, they're like being the first people all the time to reply back to people, and they seemingly are getting all these jobs. And then they would disappear within a few months. Or I'd be like, hey, I haven't seen that person, what are they up to? Oh, nothing, they quit. And then that kind of sparked a question in me, which was, why are these people disappearing? What is not working for them? And that kind of triggered this response into me, which is that they're doing what everybody else was doing. They're just following the same practices because they looked online and they saw what everybody else was doing. And then therefore, logically, they would think, okay, well, if everyone else is doing it, then I should do it too, because that seems to be the going thing. Here's the problem with all of that I just mentioned, is that they're horribly impersonal practices. And one of the things that I realized as I started to gain momentum in my business was that you need to find a way to personalize everything. You need to find a way to not make people just look at your price and say, I'll buy. You need to find a way to make sure that people don't just say, can you do this character? Yes, here's some money. You need to find a way to keep people engaged throughout the update process. You need to find a way to keep clients hooked onto you and wanting to come back to you. And that bred this simple understanding for me, is that people don't buy artwork. People buy your experience with them. Because in commissioning an artist and growing a freelance business, they care much less about the product and much more about the process. And this I learned to be one of the major things that you need to do in order to circumnavigate failure. It makes sense, doesn't it? And here's how I want to offer it to you another way, is that if you follow everybody else's advice, then therefore logically you can only hope to gain as much as everybody else is gaining. And if everybody else is mostly entrenched in failure and they're not getting what they want, and they're not getting the price that they want, and they're not getting the consistency that they want, then why are you following that? And what do you hope to do if you're doing everything and doing nothing different? So you have the same complaints, the same low prices, and then the same lack of business. How can you achieve more? You can't, friend. You have to do differently. If it sounds weird, you gotta do it. If it seems atypical, try it out. And that's what I promote all throughout my channel, so that you can actually get what you want at the price tag you want it, with the enjoyment and the fulfillment that you want. Isn't that really what you want at the end of the day? And if you want to get those real authentic tips and strategies that actually will work for you, that aren't based on just your popularity, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, because I'm here for you every single week, giving you the best tips. And hey, look, maybe you've been trying this for a while and you know this stuff already, but you just can't implement it. And that's where my one-on-one art mentorship comes into play. Listen, this is not a course, it's not a class, it's me and you working one-on-one to accomplish the things that you want to do at the pace you want to do it. I've helped people just like you totally supercharge their art business and be able to achieve everything that they didn't think they'd be able to do for years in a matter of months. And if that sounds like you, then go ahead and check out the link in my description, fill out the form, and I'll reach out to you soon. And the next action you're going to want to take now is this too. Would you like to know a major tip that's going to help you supercharge your art and motivation for your sustainable growth? Oftentimes, when you're conducting yourself as a freelance artist and you're getting paid from that, that golden goose egg that you want so bad, which is to get paid for your artwork, sounds really great and it sounds really awesome, but it actually kind of anesthetizes you. Here's what I mean. Your desire to improvement once you get paid tends to wane. It tends to fall off. And this is when your complacency will set in. And one of the mistakes I made early on was that I started to feel like it was okay for me to perform at the level to which I was getting paid for. And I would be like, well, that's good enough for this price point. My skill level is good enough for this project. And what I'm doing is good enough for that type of client. And no doubt, you want to get more. You deserve to get more. You deserve to be able to ask for more. But here's one thing that you've probably not taken into account, because I didn't at first too. One of the things I started to do at that point was practice taking ownership of everything. And instead of looking at and complaining what I'm not getting or what I want to get or what I feel like I will never get, because honestly, if you think you never get it and you're not willing to put that effort for it, you're never going to. So one of the things that I realized was that I needed to take a look at what I was doing and ask myself this. What do I need to do to get to that next level? What skills do I need to learn to get there? What resources do I need to gather and find online or find in person or find through a course that's going to allow me to get there? Another big practice I started to adopt right now is that I started to take a look at the people that I idolize, the people that I wanted to be like, and I bet you have them too. Who's that, by the way? So I started to take a look at that and I asked myself, like, okay, what skills are in their artwork? What attracts me to them? What specifically am I going to hook onto? Because when you really take a look at the people that you look up to and the artists that are most similarly aligned to what you're interested in, you can pick out parts. And if you're real specific with this and you don't look at it in terms of like, oh, well, their artwork is good and mine is not good, then you start to really analyze it carefully. And what I'm suggesting for you here is very purposeful, meaningful comparison. And in every artwork that you do, what if you started to compare yourself to those, and not in a bad way, but you see those successes where you're like, yeah, hey, that area, that looked pretty fire, that looked great. And then this area up over here, okay, I'm not gonna feel bad about that, but I'm gonna recognize I could do that better next time. By doing this, this allowed me to grow exponentially. And through this practice, I was able to confidently ask for and receive exactly what I wanted. Wouldn't you love that too? Now let me ask you this. How much money do you need to feel motivated for your artwork? How much do you feel needs to come across the table, needs to hop into your bank account for you to just feel turbocharged into doing anything that's asked of you? Or wait a minute, what if that's actually the worst idea ever and you've probably thought about it before? Because I just want to be very real and honest with you here. I've worked in the whole spectrum from $35 to $1,500. You know what I learned from that? I feel the exact same way. I feel the exact same anxieties come up at the beginning of every single project. Is usually when I am the most anxious. It's when I am the most avoidant. It's when I start looking for other fun things to do or that show to watch or that game to play. Because one thing that I always realize is that regardless of the pay, it always devolved down into work. It 100% always came down to the fact that I now had a responsibility. I had to make that artwork and I needed to make sure that it got done. And one thing I definitely discovered, and I've talked about this so much with other artists, when you're making artwork, it's natural for these feelings to come up all of the time. And it's totally natural for you to just realize your worst fears and they rise to the surface, because in being an artist, you're exploring your humanity. And this is when, typically, while you're working on a project, again, regardless of how much you're getting paid, regardless of how many zeros or digits are in those numbers, you are going to feel the exact same way, and that's never going to go away. You're going to constantly look back to your references like I did, and I used to think like, oh, I'm not good enough, or like, I'm not worth this, or hey, I'm a fraud, I'm a phony, I'm going to disappoint this person. Like, is this you? Does this run through your mind too? So one of the things that I started to do was I started to shift my mindset, and this is what I want to offer you. And I started to look at this as far as needing to see the potential in every single opportunity that came my way over the obligation. Because when you feel obligated to do something, what does that mean? You start to say things like, I need to do this, I have to do this. And you feel resistance to things that you need to do and you have to do. Like when you were a kid and you're like, I have to do homework and I need to take out the trash and I need to do these chores, right? Nobody likes to do that crap. But when you start to take a look at it from an opportunity standpoint, you start to develop some level of appreciation. And here's a practice that I still do to this very day, okay? Whether or not I'm working with somebody in my mentorship or I'm also just getting a freelance client, is that whenever I see that PayPal notification come across my phone screen, is I'll literally just put my hand on my heart and be like, thank you. Thank you so much. And I would work to make sure that I deliver on that appreciation. And I really do appreciate it, no matter how much they paid me. Throughout my entire journey, I started to do this. Because when I started to take a look at that as I'm helping out another human being and I'm doing something with gratitude for it, here's one major thing that I came to realize, and I want to impart this to you, friend, is that if you're squandering every opportunity that's coming your way, there's no way you're ever going to be blessed with more than what you're currently getting, because you're being a poor steward of it. And when I was first starting out, I realized that my inconsistency was my fault because I never appreciated or showed gratitude for what I was currently getting. And I can guarantee that if you are treating everything that comes your way with love and appreciation, you're going to have far more blessings than limited blessings. How's that sound? Now, how would you like to know the number one ninja practice that I did throughout my entire art business journey that my clients never even knew about, but it allowed me to totally change and evolve the trajectory of my art and my entire business? So let me ask you, are you doing the same type of work all the time? You work for the same type of clients, you're doing the same type of characters with the same type of faces and the same type of backgrounds with the same type of clothes and the same type of lighting? Does this seem like you here? Because one of the things you're probably feeling like, you just feel like you're not growing. You're feeling like you're always doing the same dang thing over and over and over and over again, right? Is this you? So after my first couple years, getting my feet wet, getting my processes down, I started to realize this, is that I had this big epiphany that I wasn't challenging myself, and I would work directly to the spec and I might not innovate terribly beyond that. So one realization I want to share with you that I came to at that time was that, hey, if the client's not going to challenge me, then I'm going to take the ownership to do that myself. So one thing I want to ask you to do here is, for every single artwork that you're doing, is to not just fall into complacency for what you need to do, what you're asked to do, what you have to do, is instead also give yourself and designate one specific task for you to do that's new, unique, and special for that, okay? So like, what can this be? This can be a different perspective, it can be different lighting, it can be a different type of pose, you can do a different skin color, you can do another gender, maybe you're only doing pretty girls and you want to try some guys, maybe? Maybe you want to insert a mood. Maybe you're always doing something really serious. You want to do something really cute. Maybe you want to do something scary and said no. You want to do something that's really funny. I've done these things before, and it's really allowed me to enjoy my artwork and feel my growth, because when you're making progress is happiness, my friend. And look, clients were always unaware of this. I never said this. I never vocalized it. But look, they always picked up on it. And every single time I would deliver, they'd be like, hey, Sean, I love that mood. I love how you did that skin. I love that lighting on it. And it was always so ironic to me because that was never even brought up by them or me, but they really appreciated it. So on this note, what can you do, or what are you avoiding doing in order to bring your art to the next level while you are conducting yourself as a business person? Now, would you like to know why you're probably sabotaging your current projects and your current business? You might not even be aware of it. So inevitably, while you're getting your specs and while you're working with your clients and while you're conducting yourself as a business person in art, you're gonna get things that you don't like. You're gonna get specs that seem less than desirable. You're gonna have to complete parts of projects or deal with some clients that maybe you don't enjoy working with as much as others, right? So how do you do this? How do you sustain it? And how do you prevent yourself from burnout? Because I bet right now you're very afraid of burning out through any of those scenarios, right? Well, here's my major tip, and here's something that I started to do. When I got any type of a spec, when I got a type of client, when I was working on artwork that I was dictated to do and I didn't really love doing, here's what I started to do. I would pick out one thing, just one thing in that artwork that I really enjoyed working on. And I would just work to make sure that that came out awesome. And this miraculous discovery also propelled me to want to summon the motivation and all the effort necessary to make sure everything else in our work matched the level of that. So for example, if it was like, hey, I just like this pretty girl's face, I would just focus on that. And then inevitably I would make sure that, hey, everything else looked as good as that. Or it'd be like, hey, I really like the mood in this piece. I want to make sure that everything about this artwork conveys that mood. So while you're doing this, here's what I want you to do. Play to your strengths, but also seek improvement. By doing that, it prevents you from burning out by doing the things that you don't want to do because you're always going to be focused on the things that you do want to do. How's that sound? So do you remember 2020? This thing called COVID kind of wrecked the world. But I also want to tell you why I'm deeply grateful for the struggle that I went through during that time and how it completely changed my business forever, and it gifted me an amazing understanding that I'm grateful for. I was outside of my art business that I was growing and my full-time job teaching art. I was working for this company where I taught English to Chinese children on the weekends. And through that experience, it was completely friggin' miserable, all right? Just to put this in perspective, I did this on a Friday night and a Saturday night, super late at night when my family was asleep, and I did not have a day off for almost 4 years unless I actually took a vacation. And it was so miserable and it took such a toll on me, and I'm not happy to say, like, it definitely prevented me from enjoying my family as much as I could have. And the company that I work for, which was VIP Kid, did you ever work for these people too? Because man, I hated this company. And then during COVID, the company was based in China, and they decided that they were only going to localize their teachers and no longer use international teachers. So they completely shut down, literally without any type of notice, overnight. I was sitting at work one day, notification after notification after notification of all my classes canceled. And I freaked out. And I remember I was on the phone with my wife, and I was very upset. And then I came to this realization while I was on the phone with her. I said, look, I'm sorry that this happened, but here's what I promise you, that I'm going to double down on my freelance business, and I'm going to double what I made there. And through having my rapid shift into commissions and making that promise to my wife and making that commitment to my family, I realized something that was always there, but I just never did. And that was, I had a better reason why. Because most of you are gonna get into your freelance business with just the raw desire to make money and to have a job or to open up more opportunities. And look, that's all great. But I'm just gonna tell you, that won't sustain you. It will only allow you to plateau at some point, to which point you get that, but it's never gonna allow you to really get to the point that you really, really deep down in here wanna get to. So it's at this point that I realized this. I need to have a much more personal reason why beyond just I wanna make money or vanities. And that's great that you wanna go ahead and you wanna buy a car or move out, or you wanna go ahead and like buy a PS5, like that's all great, there's no shame in that. But you need a deeper reason why. So like for me at that time, I was like, look, I need complete freedom for me and my family. I need to be able to make sure that my family enjoys me at every single time that I'm with them. I need to have that autonomy to be able to make my own schedule, and I need to be able to make sure that I am there for my kids like my parents were not there for me. That was my deep why. And why do you need this? If this sounds like woo-woo, let me just clarify this for you. Is that you need this to supersede all of your doubts and fears and anxieties, but most importantly, your excuses, so that you're not like, I don't feel like working on my art. I don't feel like doing that project. I don't feel like drawing right now. Because honestly, when you have a deep why, you're gonna be like, screw that. I don't need a reason why. I don't need motivation. I don't need to search for that nonsense. I need to just sit down and do it because you have the discipline for it. Through doing this too, it's how you're gonna supersede those base desires and those excuses that you have, and you're gonna be able to impact the people that you want to impact. How's that sound for you, and what's your why? Now, as an art educator, I wanna let you know this. Surprisingly, you might not realize that a lot of your practices are a bigger waste of time than you might realize. And I also wanna just confess to you right now. Hi, my name is Sean, and I have not done formal practices in art for 5 years, and yet my artwork has been growing consistently year after year and sometimes month after month, and here's how. So to start this off, let me ask you this. Have you ever feel compelled to get better by, maybe you have to draw 200 boxes or 100 hands or do 1,000 studies or make sure that you always grind out that daily sketch or else you're gonna fail or else you're not gonna make it? Here's the problem with that. It's just not good advice. I'm saying this as a practitioner and also as an art educator. I wanna empower you here. Stop being a bench warmer and get on the field. Stop being the player that comes to every single practice and just dips their toes into what they think that they're comfortable with, and start actually doing what you want to do. Instead of you feeling compelled like you have to do a bajillion practices to be good, just focus on projects, because that's literally what I've been doing. For the last 5 years, I've literally pretty much only been doing projects. And you can insert all of your challenges that you want to grow and succeed at into your projects, into your client work. You wanna get better with hands? Cool, do an expressive hands. You wanna get better with expressions? Great, insert an expression into what you've already been paid to do, into what you're already having to do. You wanna get better at different materials? Great. Challenge yourself to insert 1 or 2 of those into every single artwork. It doesn't have to be everything all at once. You wanna get better at landscapes and you wanna get better at backgrounds? Great, do one. Give one to a client. Many a time have I started to notice, hey, I really want more complete looking illustrations so I can get more higher ticket clients, so I'll actually just do it. I'll just give it to them. I'm already paid for it. I'm already doing the project. I might as well just do it. And here's how I want you to think about this, okay? You can think of this just like an RPG, and you can grind the starter level, starter town monsters, or you can go ahead and fight bosses for way more XP. And then 2, there's also that bleed effect that happens where like you learn certain things by challenging yourself in certain pieces, and then you bring that knowledge into the next one. You bring that knowledge into the next one. So how does that sound? And are you feeling like you're just not worth it because you've been practicing too much? Or do you feel like you need to practice excessively before you can do the project? Because my friend, you got to reverse that. Just get into your projects and give yourself those challenges and those tasks in those projects instead. That way you have more meaningful artwork, and from a psychological perspective too, when you have an application for that knowledge, it becomes less theoretical and it becomes far more practical. How's that sound? So here's a big, massive tip that I want you to start to do too. After every single job that you do, it's important for you to analyze what worked really well. Like really take a look at what did you do well, but then also you need to really critically examine what did you not do well. And I'm not just talking about your artwork, that's the easy part. This looks good, this doesn't. I need to improve here. This is pretty good for now, I need to focus elsewhere. But specifically y'all, let's talk about your practices. And you might be looking at what other people are doing and you're asking yourself, hey, how do they get this? How did they get more money? How did they continue to grow? Why are they getting what I'm not getting? Is this you, by the way? Because I just want to let you know this, friend. You're asking the wrong questions. And part of you growing as a professional and an artist is learning to ask the right questions. And in everything that you're doing, you need to analyze every single experience and dissect that so that you can see what is working and what you need to stop, continue, and you need to improve upon. And generally, when I'm talking about improving things, I'm talking about speed with you too. And if you want to grow your speed, you need to think about these 3 things. You need to think about, first off, what's your process like? How do you improve that for next time? What resources do you need and need to look up? And lastly, what about your tools? Are you using the right tools, or the tools that could really supercharge your process and make it look better and get it done quicker? Because if so, I made an entire video for you right here that's gonna teach you the best things you're probably not doing, but you should. Thanks so much, and if you enjoyed this, make sure you share it with somebody that you know.